I'm Beth Guckenberger, and this is the Reckless Faith Podcast. And we're back today at the Reckless Faith Podcast with my friend Rob Hall.
Beth, this has been awesome.
No, thanks.
And today's story, today is day 9, by the way. Your mama co-labored, which when I saw the title, I'm like, I have to read this. I don't even know what it's about. But it's yes to pray. And then I started reading, and it was the story of Barbara Shaw, which I've heard that story a ton of times. It never gets old to me. So
I know. I think she is such an example to me of someone who understood what her calling was in life and was content with just being obedient in it. And God used her to move the needle in prayer. I think sometimes I often, work out my faith with like 90% of my energy, and then I use 10% of it to ask the Lord to bless whatever it is I did with 90% of my time. And the most effective, people in biblical history spent 90% of their time in prayer and only 10% living their life out from that engagement they got with the Lord. And there's this story I love in Exodus 33. It gets a lot of attention because it's this passage where Moses goes into something called the tent of the meeting. And it says there that the Lord talks to him face to face as one would a friend. And so that's usually what gets quoted. That's
Sure.
Exodus 33:11, because it's so frankly cool to think about God talking to us face to face like one would a friend. But the part right at the end of that verse, at the end of 11, it says, like basically after Moses goes into the tent of the meeting and gets his spiritual download and gets all the directions of what he's supposed to do, he leaves the tent of the meeting to go back down into Israel to tell them what it is the Lord had instructed. And it says, but Joshua, the son of Nun, who followed him in there, who was in every sense, Moses was his mentor. It says Joshua, son of Nun, stayed behind. Like he stayed in the tent of the meeting because he followed his mentor, and they're like, hey, what are we doing? Okay, we're going to talk to the Lord here face to face as one as a friend. It was so captivating to him that he didn't want to leave. And I think if you just turn your Bible a couple chapters over, you read about all the cool things Joshua's going to do one day, march around Jericho and go into the land like a spy with his buddy Caleb. And I think that one of the things that Barbara's story illustrated for me is like you don't actually get to do some of those great stories. You don't get to be swept up in things that are multi-generational and bigger than you without spending time face to face with the Lord as one would a friend. And she modeled that for me, even though I never even met her, and I won't even see her till one day when I get in heaven. And I think, like for me, I've been asking the Lord in my time alone with Him, like, oh my gosh, I have so much I want to say to you right now. And I want to make sure, are you paying attention to this? And have you thought about this? And I have this great idea for this. And would you bless this? And like, it's not that He doesn't delight in hearing all the thinking and feeling that I have, but I think He wants to spend, there's this Hebrew word I learned recently. I'm not even sure I'll say it right, but it's Tefilah, Tefilah. And it's the practice of praying to align your heart with God's will instead of trying to move God's hand on your behalf. And I've been trying to, in prayer lately, tell the Lord, I don't know what your will is, but I want in on it. I asking for you to guide the next step instead of telling you what I think might be the best way for us to go. And that shift in my prayer life, which is what I imagine Barbara Shaw was practicing, is slowly changing the way that I think and pray about other people and certainly about my future.
The action step today seems simple, and in some ways it is, but I have to confess, sometimes even when I set aside time to pray, the action step is set an alarm on your phone as a reminder to pray at a set time each day for a specific person, even if it's just 2 minutes. I know when I set aside time and I'm like, okay, I'm going to pray for this person. Sometimes I get there and I'm like, I don't know what to pray. So give people like me a little bit of instruction when the alarm goes off. What can jumpstart me into that 2 or 5 or 10 minutes, however much time I've set aside?
Yeah, it's funny. First of all, when you do that, I think what happens, the result of it is you get endeared to that person. So somebody asked me to pray for their child a number of years ago, and I don't regularly see their child. They have their own life and their own social circles. But when I do see that child, man, I feel drawn to them, endeared to them because of time I've spent battling on their behalf in the spiritual realm. But I think I don't think that God's looking for an agenda. I don't think there has to be a formula. I think when you ask on behalf, you're acknowledging, hey, there are things going on in this person's life that I don't understand. I don't see the big picture. I don't understand what caused it or what you're going to do with it, but I want to join in on it. I want to be a part of it. Move your hand, show things like mercy, grace. Sometimes I just read verses and remind the Lord of the things he taught me about himself first. And I insert the name of the person I'm praying inside of those verses.
So sometimes it can be specific stuff like I pray for their marriage or I pray for
Health.
whatever that is. But then sometimes it can be almost a prayer of blessing. Just, Lord, I don't know what's happening in this person's life, but I've set aside time. Would you bless them with these things? Those would be a good way to sort of prompt my spirit to get rolling.
Yeah, and it actually feels to me like like I do when I'm done physically working out. Like that cost me something, but I feel better for it.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I hope people are enjoying this bonus material, right? It's one thing to read it, and I hope if people are watching this or listening to it on the podcast or watching it on YouTube and they haven't yet gotten the book has got so much great stuff in it. So if you've already purchased Reckless Faith, A 40-Day Journey to Saying Yes, we hope that our conversations today encourage you and give you meaning and that you're having great conversations with your other people and with God about what's going on. But if you haven't, you somehow landed here in a different way, and you haven't gotten the book, I hope this spurs people on to do that. And you can find the book at Amazon, or you can get the book and other resources by visiting backtoback.org/40days, back2back.org/40days.
Oh, thanks for being on this Reckless Faith journey with us. And until next time.